changes coming up in the new PTS. For those that don't know, there's going to be a change related to the evasion skill. The evasion skill will no longer cause players to who are in medium armor to dodge randomly. It was 15% chance to dodge. Nightblades also have a similar skill that is not stamina based. It's magicka based. It's called Blur, and that basically that morph does the exact same thing. Also, there were sets. I forget the set called from Cradle of Shadow. It also basically when you're healed um, by a Magicka player, it gave you a chance to basically receive the same evasion buff for 6 seconds. So the new change to the PTS is that this skill is actually going to reduce area of effect damage. And I wanted to talk about how the Magicka Dragon Knight will be severely nerfed in the upcoming patch notes if things don't change. The reason being is if you look at the Magicka Dragon Knight, now I play a hybrid Dragon Knight, so we'll go into that in a little bit. But if you play a standard Magicka Dragon Knight, something that you'll notice is that literally every ultimate, whether it's Banner, whether it's Leap, whether it's Magma Armor, all do area of effect damage. So basically, any Magicka Nightblade running Blur, any Stamina class that's running the evasion buff is going to take 25% less damage from all of your ultimates. I know a lot of Magicka DKs basically use their Leap as an execute, and so if things don't change, you're literally going to be doing 25% less damage on your Leap. Now, basically, that's going to hurt Magicka DK when it comes to sustain. Because obviously, if a lot of your abilities, when you look at them, for example, Engulfing Flame, it does conal damage. So the damage from Engulfing will be nerfed by 25%. The damage from Volatile Armor, the AoE that you do when you activate the ability, right? That ability will be nerfed by 25% on all stamina players and on Magicka Nightblade. Also, if you run either morph of Inhale, that will be nerfed as well. Talons, either nerf will be morphed. Either morph will be nerfed by 25%. Also, in looking at, they made changes to Eruption. Wonderful. They increased the dot chance, but guess what? Stamina players as well as Magicka Nightblades will take 25% less damage, as well as anybody who runs. Let me briefly look up. I forget the name of that set. You get it from Cradle of Shadows, but it also gives you. It's a light armor set. It also gives you the exact same buff when a player is healed. It gives it to you for, I believe, 6 seconds. I forget the name of it. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Gossamer, that's what it is. So it says when you heal a friendly target, you have a 10% chance to give them major evasion for 6 seconds. So basically, any healer running that ability as a buff, which there's absolutely no reason to because there are so many abilities in the game that are area of effect. For example, looking at basically Destro, you'll be taking 25% less damage from Destro. So Magicka class, which already hurts in terms of damage, will be doing less damage with their ultimate. If you use, for example, Shooting Star will do 25% less damage. Stamina will also be affected, but it will not be affected as much as Magicka players because their Dawnbreakers would do 25% less damage. Also, if you look at the dual wielding, we see a lot of players using the spin to win. So the classes that can use it, which are namely stamina builds, will take less damage, but Magicka players outside of Magicka Nightblades will take the same amount of it will take the same amount of damage because they don't have access really to the major evasion buff that changes. Um, Also, if you look at where is it? Is it in the Sigic? No, I think that's about it. But primarily, I was talking about the Magicka Dragon Knight because I play I play DK. I played DK for a very long time, and on the forums, nobody is talking about this nerf. That the it's not a nerf to the class, but it's the change to the armor buff in medium armor will nerf the Dragon Knight's damage immensely. The other problem is that they made a change to the way that Flame Lash is going to work. So now when you off balance a target, you gain Power Lash, which was a free attack. That attack will now have a Magicka cost to it. Now we already know that Magicka Dragon Knights have lost quite a bit of their damage when they made Power Lash dodgeable. The moment you would fossilize your opponent, especially dealing with stand builds, they automatically roll dodged. So you either had to gap close to them and then Power Lash, or your Power Lash would just miss and it would basically be put on the 3-second cooldown and you would not have access to the heal. Now with the changes, not only are you more likely to miss the Power Lash proc, but it will now also cost you Magicka. So you will basically you will miss the damage, miss the heal, and they've removed also the stun from it, but then now it will cost you Magicka. And we already are going to be hurting because of all the changes to the area of effect abilities that the Dragon Knight is forced to run in, because Magicka Dragon Knight is primarily an AoE with very limited single target damage abilities, and in essence, because of the changes to evasion, it will affect both the damage as well as the Magicka Dragon Knight's sustain. Because obviously, if you're doing 25% less damage, that means you're going to have to be using more attacks, which means that your sustain is going to be hurt quite a bit. Now with that, the only change of benefit was actually to the Stam DK, which was the minor buffs got changed from 5%, which they get through the passive here. It says when you cast a skill from the mountain from the Earth and Heart ability, you gain 5% weapon damage. That got changed to 10%. So that benefits stamina DKs. It's useless for Magicka DKs, but in the particular build that I run, hybrid DKs got a buff because we'll be getting an extra 5% weapon damage, which equates to an extra 5% spell damage. So we'll be able to do more damage in that respect. So this is something that nobody is talking about. I haven't seen any streamers talking about the changes to Magicka DK damage or the changes as a result of to their sustain. And so this was something that I wanted to cover. Some other people were like, oh, I also forgot to mention that Whip got a nerf. They basically nerfed the range of Whip to increase the range of Burning Embers. It's very difficult to get the skill off because of the short distance, 5 meters. When trying to use it on a target, it would often go gray because it's very easy to get out of the 5-meter range. So they nerfed Whip range down to 5 and changed, I forgot which passive it was. They changed one of the passives basically to increase the range by 2 meters of all of the melee abilities. So you're going to get, so the Whip is going to go down to 7 meters from 8 meters, but you're going to be getting 2 meters on your Burning Embers, which really doesn't matter because often Magicka DK struggles with staying within range of its opponent, and so this nerf is also going to affect Magicka DK in terms of their ability to continuously apply damage to their opponent. So you may be forced into running a gap closer to keep yourself within range, which is difficult. I know a lot of Magicka DKs don't use it because they basically hurt for bar space. Um, and so I just wanted to touch on this because I haven't heard anybody talking about it. Anybody that mentions it think that it's not really that big a deal, that Magicka DKs will be fine. But the reality is that they won't, because there's absolutely no reason not to run the major evasion buff in the upcoming patch, because many abilities, both by Dragon Knights and also the spin to win, the Dawnbreakers will do reduced damage. So there's no reason to not use that skill, especially in CP, because it's easier to sustain in no CP. The other thing is that which many people aren't talking about, is that Nightblade also got a buff, especially against Magicka DK, because they can either run the evasion in the medium armor tree, or they can just run their class ability Blur to gain the reduction in damage. Now, the way that, of course, the Magicka Dragon Knight pulls out the Stamblade is typically by using volatile armor. So when you apply volatile armor to the Nightblade, not only does the damage get reduced because of cloak, so if the Nightblade cloaks, typically you're gonna lose 2 ticks of damage. So that basically reduces the damage by 40%, because it only ticks 5 times and you miss 2 ticks. So you're basically losing 40% just from one cloak. The second thing is that because it's an AoE, you're going to lose an additional 25%. So if you try to use engulfing, or if you try to use volatile armor, if you try to use, for example, talons, if you run inhale and you try to use inhale, the damage will be reduced against Nightblades, whether they're Magicka or Stamina. The other thing is that they made a change to the minor buffs. So before, the minor buff for minor berserk was only 8%. Now that got increased to 10%. So they, in essence, gained a 2% buff to their critical damage over Dragon Knight. The other thing is that there was a change in the CP passive. So not Vengeance, the Precision. So in the new CP passive, this got reduced by, I believe it's 2%, because they buffed all of the minors. So they basically removed it. They basically increased it in the minors by 2 or 3%, I forget, and then they reduced this CP passive here, and as well as the physical one here. They reduced, I forget if it's 2 or 3%. But Magicka DK doesn't have access to the buff unless you're using the Resto staff and you're running Combat Prayer, which most Dragon Knights don't. Most Dragon Knights aren't running because the heal sucks. And you're really not going to run it for the buff for only 8 seconds. So this actually is a further nerf to the Dragon Knight's damage, because you're going to be losing 2 or 3% spell critical. So your spell critical percent is going to go down, while the Nightblades will remain the same, while also getting a buff to their critical damage, as well as what we spoke about before, the medium armor or the blur skill receiving the AoE reduction to skills. So I just wanted to recap that because of the upcoming changes, you're going to see Magicka Dragon Knight doing less critical damage due to the reduction in the CP passive. No real access to the minor berserk passive, which both the warden also got that buff, as well as the both Magicka and Stamina Nightblade. They increased it for them, and DK really doesn't have access to it. The other thing is that most of the Magicka Dragon Knight skills are AoE dependent, and because there's really no reason not to run evasion or to run Blur as a Nightblade, you will see a reduction in your damage as well as an increase in your difficulty in sustaining against stamina classes. The other thing that the other change was the change to agility with the upcoming patch. Before it was 12% and they buffed it to 15%. So now they're gaining 3% more weapon damage as well as receiving the buff to the damage reduction. And this is something that nobody's really talking about. I find that it's something that the community should talk about. That the Dragon Knight, the Magdk Dragon Knight, received absolutely no buffs, no good changes to the upcoming patch. It got sustain nerf and a damage nerf, and I'm hoping that somebody will bring this up on the forums or in the PTS patch notes. I haven't heard Outcast talk about it. You know, everything is about the crying over the ward having a 1 second cast time, but I think even more so the Magdk Dragon Knight will be affected because there are other ways to run Sork. Sork is really the only one that was affected by the changes to the annulment. You can always run heavy armor and still be able to run the Resto Ward for a heal. You can always run Life Giver. So Sorcerer will still be able to find ways to sustain their damage in light armor. Whereas the DK, there really is no way in the current meta, that's in the meta that is going to be coming, for the DK to be able to maintain being a damage class. I hope everybody gets a chance to watch this video, and please post on the forums, and hopefully we can get some sort of change, because the Magdk Dragon Knight will be hurt very much by the upcoming changes. Thank you for watching this, and God bless.